They say the scariest of scary stories are those that involve real people, not the paranormal. After this, I have to say I agree. Here's my recollection of the most terrifying experience of my life. My husband was sleeping his way back to good health in the hospital after a nasty infection. The man never went to the doctor, and I practically had to force him to go to the hospital when his fever hit 105. I was worried. They admitted him, and he stayed for a week. The day before he was supposed to be sent home was a Sunday, and while my workplace was closed, I had to catch up on year-end reports. It wasn't unusual for me to come in on days we were closed. My coworker Lolo would be there, which meant I could bring in my daughter. Lolo was childless, though she had tried for many years before her husband passed away to conceive. She was in this particular Sunday to work on the company newsletter, and as it was a rather simple project, she often asked to play with my daughter Via when I brought her in. The day started off normal. As I crunched the numbers and prepared my reports, Lolo and Via sat on the other side of the office room coloring. It made me happy to watch them. Lolo got so much enjoyment from being around a child, and Via loved the attention. It was a win-win. When she asked if she could take the little lady for a walk around the dealership, I said sure. What could it hurt? We were the only ones in the building, and Via loved to look at all the cars. A half hour passed. I thought it was odd that they were gone so long, so I took a peek out of the cashier's window to see if they were in the waiting room. They weren't. But as I turned to go back to my desk, I noticed Lolo's shoes. She looked like she was lying face down, still, in the hallway. My heart raced as I ran out to see what happened. Via was nowhere in sight. I flipped open my phone and dialed 911 and ran down the hall to the service area to try to find my daughter. I hardly responded to the operator, I was so frantic. She said they would send someone and told me to stay put, but I couldn't. My daughter was gone. Lolo had been knocked out. Something was very wrong with this picture, and by the time they got there, it could be worse. I dropped the phone when I heard a tiny, tiny scream in the distance. It was coming from the parts department, an area of the building that remains locked when business is closed. The only way in was with a key, so whoever had her was a coworker. I ran to the door and shoved it. It was locked. I saw her standing in an aisle, a tall figure behind her, and when she saw me, she tried to run to the door. He grabbed her and ran to the back of the room, out of sight. I was about to lose it when I saw the propane tank nestled behind a display to my right. I grabbed it and threw it through the glass. It shattered and I unlocked the door and raced in. I heard her cries from the upstairs stockroom and headed up the stairs as fast as I could go. As I ran, I heard the door bust in downstairs. The police were here, finally. I yelled to give them my location, rounded the corner in the stockroom, peering down the aisles trying to find her. Aisle 1, nowhere in sight. Aisle 2, nowhere in sight. What I saw in aisle 3 chilled me to the bone. The owner's son, a unknown garbage can style addict who used to be a salesman had my daughter at the end of the aisle. He was tying her up with electrical wire. She tried to run to me and fell. He tried to run back down the stairs, but as he hit the middle of the steps, he was blocked off by police officers. Via was fine physically. I've been taking her to a child therapist to work through the trauma. I'm just glad she's too young for this to really form into a memory. As for the crazy man who took her, he had been living upstairs. Apparently, no one took his key when he was fired 6 months previous. He never provided an explanation, and the owner paid a large amount of money to keep this out of the news. As for Lolo, she recovered and never came back to work, though we remained in touch. Afternoon, a handful of years ago, my friend invited me over to her place downtown for a get-together. So we planned to get to her place at the same time. If I got there early, her roommate would let me in. Turns out I did get there early. I met her roommate once before, so it wasn't going to be too awkward while it was just the two of us. She lets me in and just starts going into how she got super creeped out earlier, left her place for a bit, and happened to be home as I pulled up. I asked what she was talking about. You know our attic upstairs? How there's a railing at the very top where the stairs end? I had to move some stuff out of my room and take it upstairs, so I threw some things in a big box to make one trip. Well, the box was really heavy, and I'm alone, so I would take breaks. Her room was downstairs on the first floor, and she had 2 flights to go up. But when I got to the attic, I set the box down to take a quick break. I look up, and I swear to God, I saw someone pull their face away from the railing, right as we made eye contact. Like someone was looking at me and tried to hide as I glanced at the top of the stairs. I cut her off and said that we should probably go outside because that didn't sit too well with me. But she continues to say no. She called out upstairs and no one answered. And like an idiot, she walked upstairs and looked around. She said she didn't find anything. No real signs of entry or anything. However, their place is literally about half a foot away from another place, and their windows in the attic level line up with the windows to the other house. There had been some complaints about homeless people squatting at the other home because it's vacant. She only thought of all this once I got there. At this point, we're both convinced that it was either some homeless person, or simply she was just seeing things. Soon after, my friend shows up from work, and we give her the lowdown. She's a little shaken up about it, but we all looked around the place and decided there was no real threat. Especially since I'm super skeptical about things, which probably gets me in trouble. I was bent on telling them she was seeing things, and that we were fine. At the end of the night, I was on my friend's computer in her room showing her pictures from this vacation I took with my friends. Then we hear something upstairs in the attic, like a thud. She calls out to her roommate, and her roommate answers from downstairs and starts to walk upstairs to the bedroom. We tell her we think we heard something upstairs, and we waited in silence. again. A thud. Like someone walked into something. It's hard to put into words what I actually thought. I didn't take it as a threat or feel any real danger, just that I was convinced it was something else, like, oh, the house is old, or even if something was really going on, there's 3 of us. Looking back, as I typed this, that was all probably a defense mechanism because I was so afraid of it actually being something. But the 3 of us, never having to face something like this, were trying to decide what to do. Do we call the police? Do we wait and see what's going on? Do we just run outside? I said that I would take a closer look. I wasn't going to go upstairs, but I was going to walk upstairs to the door and try to listen for something else. But right then, we all heard the same thing. That 3rd floor door opened and someone walked downstairs a few steps. Then stops. I'm not making this up. This is what I heard. In an instant, we run to the door and slam it shut. The house is older, so there aren't any locks on the bedroom doors. Just the bathroom and the front and back doors. I'm completely freaking out at this point, even if we outnumber whoever just walked downstairs. The amount of pressure I put on the doorknob and the door itself was at some superhero level. I felt like I was going to faint for how scared I was. It's quiet for a moment, and the doorknob begins to turn and I can feel some pressure from the door pushing on me. Someone is trying to get in. It gets quiet again, and suddenly, the door shoots back. The amount of force almost knocked me off balance. Right then, the door is banging against my shoulder. Now this person is trying to force their way in by throwing body checks at the door. As you can imagine, there was lots of screaming on our end. I couldn't tell you if this person was yelling anything, but this was just one hysteric moment in my memory. It's hazy. I just knew I wasn't letting this door open at all, but it continued to jump open a few inches and slam back shut. Then, as quickly as it began, it stopped. We heard footsteps run back upstairs, and that was it. It was over. We held the door shut as one of my friends called the police. After what seemed like an eternity, the police arrived to the place, and I still kept my shoulder pressed on that door, just in case. My friend opened the bedroom door and raced downstairs to greet the officers, and I kept the door shut again. They made their way upstairs and we showed them around. They checked the attic out and didn't find anything, but also mentioned the possibility of someone coming in through the window from the other house, because they too knew of the homeless people squatting next door. They checked around the property next door and didn't find much. My friends and I left the house that night, and they broke their lease immediately, moving someplace else. Location, Bayshore, New York. Approximate age, 18 to 20. This old guy would go into a friend's job and pretend to be a massage therapist. had fake cards made up and would give them to my friend who was 16 but looked younger. He kept trying to get him into his car to go back to his house for a massage. The guy was very creepy and used a fake name, Bob Kohler. One night a bunch of friends were hanging out and I suggest I prank call this guy. I get on the phone making a baby voice, saying I was 7 and found his name on a bathroom wall. He was instantly interested, but used creepy phrases like, "How do I know you're legit?" and "What do you want me to do to you?" I suggest I leave my house, parents asleep, and meet him in a park near my house. We pile into the car and drive past the park. Sure enough, we find the guy sitting in his car across the street, waiting for the little boy. After an hour he leaves and we follow him back to his house. It looks straight out of a nightmare. The neighborhood was nice, but his house was covered with trees so thick you couldn't see the front door. We do a reverse search on his address and get his real name. Confirmed child molester. We called the cops, but they said they couldn't do anything because, quote, he didn't actually molest the 7-year-old at the park. We leave it be for about 5 years, then one night drive past his house. It's boarded up and most of the trees are cut down. We asked a jogger about the man who lived there. He said the guy was a creep and a molester and died alone. No family. Next logical step, we break into the house. We go near the steps in the backyard and find hidden steps down. The door is locked from the outside. We unlock it and go in. The basement had old photo developing equipment, well, so my friend said it was, but not much more. We go upstairs and notice that the lock is on the outside of the basement door. We continue through the house and we come to the hallway. It was about 8 doors, all locks on the outside. Each closet had scattered toys like army men and dress-up jewelry on the floor. We go up to the attic. Again, lock on the outside. We go in the attic and the wood plank floor looks new. However, it doesn't meet flush with the wall. We reach under the floorboards and start pulling out toys, children's clothes, and animal bones. We felt like we were going to puke, so we left and never looked back. 10 years later, that house still haunts me.